Stephen Gould and Niles Eldredge, giants in evolutionary circles, noted that the fossil record was in a state of stasis, I think. So these two guys had to invent a new theory, which they called punctuated equilibrium, where evolution apparently happened in big jumps. So am I right when I conclude from the work, these two giants in evolutionary theory, that there's nothing in the fossil records that shows any evolution having ever taken place?
Darwinian evolution was slow and gradual progress, little tiny additions supposedly occurring over millions and billions of years. However, in the fossil record, it is very clear we never see anything becoming something else. Every time we find anything in the fossil record, it is whole, complete, and perfect as it is. Now, we may find new organisms, but we never find something that's halfway from this to that. We never find anything in the process of evolution. And so that disproves Darwinian evolution. However, Darwin, by faith, believed that eventually we would find so many forms that we would see these transitions. But he died without ever finding any. And the fact of the matter is, we have, of course, found many more forms, none of which are in transition. And so the idea of slow and gradual is disproven by the fossil record. And you have to remember that while the fossils are in the ground and they are in a general order that evolutionists would claim, there are many, many places where the layers are upside down, backwards, polystrate fossils. There are many, many physical, things that prove that Darwinian evolution is not true. Now, Stephen Jay Gould, who was a teacher, a paleontologist, and a writer on the history of science, and he was a very good writer on the history of science, if you could take out his evolutionary plugs. He looked at the fossil record and simply made a very honest statement. He said there are no transitional forms found in the fossil record. It was simply a factual, truthful statement by an evolutionist. He had a graduate student named Niles Eldredge who would get his PhD working with Dr. Gould. And they simply honestly said there are no transitional forms. But they did believe that evolution was true. Therefore, they had to come up with what is called punctuated equilibrium. Now, it is simply a resurrection and a change in terminology for a idea that a evolutionary believing scientist, roughly 20, 30 years before them, had, which was called the hopeful monster theory. Now, the hopeful monster theory was that a reptile laid an egg and out popped a bird, that the evolution from reptiles to birds occurred in one generation, and it was called the hopeful monster theory. Well, of course, that got the guy laughed off the stage. Gould and Eldredge simply changed this to scientific terminology. Instead of a reptile laid an egg and out popped a bird, they said, well, what must have happened was that we had stasis, millions of years for an organism alive and not changing. And then suddenly this stasis was punctuated by a rapid burst of evolution occurring over 2, 3, or 4 generations, not one. And then after this rapid burst of progressive evolution, it returned to stasis for millions of years, not changing again. And their position was that because of these rapid bursts lasting only 2, 3, 4 generations, that instead of Darwinian evolution, which said that evolution was too slow to see, they came up with the idea that evolution was too fast to see, that these rapid bursts were not preserved, and all we saw were the fossils during the stasis periods. Now, if one thinks about that for just a moment, Darwin said evolution was too slow to see. Gould and Eldredge said it was too fast to see. The only conclusion that a rational person would have to come to is that you can't see it because it never happened.